Mansions of Madness is an adventure horror game set in H.P. Lovecraft's haunted Massachusetts. It's designed by Corey Konieczka and published by Fantasy Flight Games.
In Mansions of Madness, a team of investigators work to solve a horrifying mystery and outwit the Keeper. It plays with 2 to 5 players in 2 to 3 hours. There are 5 small expansions to Mansions of Madness. Each one adds a different story. There's also a larger expansion called Forbidden Alchemy, which adds story elements as well as new map tiles. And then there's a new large expansion coming out in early 2013 called Call of the Wild.
Players start Mansions of Madness by choosing which story they're going to play through and then making one player the Keeper. You're then going to set up the map according to the instructions for that particular story, and then lay out any extra cards, tiles, and tokens on the table.
The Keeper builds an event deck out of event cards for that story, and they choose an objective. All of the players choose a character, a trait, the items on their character card, and the skill points given on their character card.
Each round of Mansions of Madness consists of an investigator turn and a keeper turn. The investigators can go in whatever order they want, and the keeper gets to go when they're finished. The two sides are going to keep alternating this way until either the investigators have won by finding all of the secret clue cards and then completing the final objective that those clues reveal, or the keeper has won by completing their secret objective.
So on their turn, an investigator can complete 2 movement steps and an action step in whatever order they choose. On a movement step, an investigator moves into an adjacent space on the map as long as that space isn't blocked by a wall or a sealed door.
To enter a locked room, an investigator has to resolve the conditions that are listed on its lock card. Now, usually that means discarding a particular exploration card or solving a puzzle. Once a puzzle's been laid out, an investigator gets a number of actions equal to their intellect score that they can use to manipulate the pieces and solve the puzzle.
During an action step, an investigator can run into an adjacent space. They can use an action ability listed on a card. They can explore a room, attack a monster, or leave cards face up in a room. Those can be item cards or exploration cards.
Now, many actions and obstacles are going to force an investigator to test an ability. What that means is they roll a 10-sided die, and if the result is equal to or less than their listed ability score, they succeed. They can also spend a skill token to add their luck score to the ability that they're testing.
If an investigator is in the same square as a monster, they either need to evade the monster and take another action, or attack the monster. To evade, the investigator rolls a dexterity check which is modified by the monster's awareness value. If the investigator fails, they take damage equal to the monster's damage value.
To attack, an investigator can either cast a spell, use a weapon, or use their bare hands. If you're casting a spell, you're just going to follow the directions that are listed on that spell's card. Otherwise, the keeper is going to draw cards from the deck matching the monster's type until they find one that matches the investigator's chosen weapon. The investigator is then going to have to do any skill checks or other challenges that are listed on that card, and they get the listed result.
If a monster or investigator takes damage equal to or greater than their health, then they die. A player can choose another investigator if their investigator dies, but only if it's a stage of the game before the final clue and objective have been revealed.
Now, whenever a monster enters their room, or vice versa, an investigator has to pass a willpower test that's modified by that monster's horror value. If they fail, then they take 1 point of horror. And an investigator that has as many horror tokens as they have sanity value is considered insane. This makes them much easier to target by the keeper's attacks.
To explore, an investigator reveals and collects all of the exploration cards in a particular room. Now, these cards can be clues, keys to open locked doors, tomes to learn a new spell, or items.
After all of the investigators are done, it's the keeper's turn. Now, at the start of the keeper turn, any investigators that are in the same room can exchange items and exploration cards. Next, the keeper collects threat tokens equal to the number of investigators, and then they can spend their collected threat tokens on actions that are listed on the keeper action cards. These might let them move monsters, influence or attack investigators, or collect trauma and mythos cards.
So the keeper can play these special cards out of turn. Trauma cards can be played whenever an investigator takes damage or horror, or once per turn on an investigator who's insane. Mythos cards can be played at the beginning of an investigator's turn, or after an investigator has completed a particular turn step.
Next, every monster in an investigator's space can attack that investigator. Finally, the keeper is going to put a time token on top of the event deck. If the number of tokens equals the topmost card's time value, then that card is flipped over and its event is resolved.
Now, each story scenario also has special rules specific to that scenario, so make sure that before you start a specific game that you read the investigator's guide so that you know all of those little extra rules that are going on.
So one of the really nice things about Mansions of Madness, especially because it's been out for a while, is that there's a huge amount of replay value. There's all of these expansions out there, and there's also a lot of variability to the individual stories within the base game, so there's really a lot you can get out of this before you start to get bored or even need those expansions. It's also a really unique game in that it's kind of got the feel of a dungeon crawler like Descent, with one person being the opposition and everybody else working against them, except that it's a horror mystery rather than a hack and slash fighting game. You really don't want to get in many fights in Mansions of Madness. It's got a lot of other things going on. Now, the comparison to Descent is maybe a little challenging this time around because Mansions of Madness really could have used some of the refining treatment that went into Descent 2nd Edition. The game is very engaging, it's got a fantastic theme, but it really does feel a little bit fiddly, a little bit clunky, working with all of the different monster tokens, all of the various effects, and just keeping track of everything that's going on in the game could have been streamlined a little bit, and it can get in the way of what's otherwise a really engaging experience.
So another potential con for Mansions of Madness is the quality of the stories does vary depending on what you pick. So you could end up with a really great scenario and you feel really engaged one time, and then you choose a different one next time and maybe it's not quite so much fun. They do vary quite a bit, so you'll have to watch for that. Also, these kind of games, they are very different and they're not going to be for every group. So when you've got one player that plays sort of the game master character and the rest of the players playing against them, that's a very specific type of game. That game master player, especially in this game, does have a lot of work to do. So you're going to have to find somebody who really wants to do it and maybe not make them do it every time. That being said, however, I really like Mansions of Madness. I think it's really, really fun. I love the atmosphere. The Lovecraft thing is certainly something that I get into. And also it's really nice in that if you're a fan of Arkham Horror, you'll notice a lot of the same characters are going to pop up here, so you can take the characters that you really like playing in Arkham Horror and move them into this game and play with them there. So I really like the atmosphere. I think that there's a lot of variety to this game, and you're going to like it if you like sort of the Lovecraft thing.